Okay. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be your after lunch speaker. Don't fall asleep. I had a teacher in high school where if we fell asleep, he would come and drop a metal trash can right next to us. So I'm not above doing that. I don't have a medal, but I'm excited to talk about the Renewal at Our Lady of Lourdes. Before we do that, I need to step back a little and talk about my experience as a Catholic school teacher to kind of lay the groundwork about how I got to Our Lady of Lourdes. So I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. The calling in your heart, the vocation in your heart, I believe the Lord puts it on teachers' hearts at various times, but I knew from a little girl that I was going to be a teacher. Went off to Franciscan, started with a double major in literature and secondary education. I'll come back to that in a little while. Graduated from Franciscan and then came right back to Denver to teach. In my 7 years of teaching experience, I was the recipient of some pretty intense wounds as a teacher. And I think as I was preparing for this talk and thinking, why did the Lord even call me to Lourdes? I had to go back to when I was teaching. And without going into huge amount of details, I'll just highlight a couple things. The reason Catholic schools exist is to pass on the faith. And so as young, rosy-eyed teachers, 20-something, making enough money to live at home and eat ramen noodles, I wanted more than anything to pass on this love of the faith. I got hired, I started teaching preschool actually, and that was lovely, my first encounter with Catechesis of the Good Shepherd, and that just gave me this new appreciation of, wow, you can bring the faith to life in such a tangential and incarnational way for kids. So that was a good thing. That was not a wound. Then I moved on. I started teaching middle school technology of all things, which is, if you know me well enough, is pretty laughable. And then I moved into teaching English, which has been my passion, was my passion. It still is. While I was teaching English, I really tried to bring the faith in because I was in an inner city school and I was seeing kind of the brokenness of the families and this hunger for love that these students had and were not necessarily receiving. And so at every juncture, I tried to bring in the faith. And it was hard. It was difficult to incorporate it while I was stuck in this, English textbook of vocabulary is from here, spelling is from here, and then we read this giant anthropology and diagram sentences. But never mind, we did not do that. Answer comprehension questions, probably more like it. I was met with intense resistance from the administration for being too Catholic. I was told, you are the English teacher. Leave the Catholicism out. Focus on English. These kids, English is their second language. They need to learn to read and write well. All true things. But it kept coming up that my infusion of the faith was not welcome, particularly talking about the issue of pro-life, particularly about, calling out the lies of modern society, telling kids that a child is a burden, and if you're a poor Hispanic kid, we assume you're going to get pregnant, don't have the baby. Things like that were coming into play in this middle school I was teaching. So I kept trying to fight that, and I was told by the administration of the school that it was my problem, that I was trying too hard to change the demographic of these kids, to change their lifestyle in a way, and so that I needed to tone it down. I'm giving you a very shortened version, but essentially that's what it was. So that was a huge wound because, as you know, those of us, everyone here is a teacher in some capacity, you pour your life into these students. It is relational, and when you connect with them, and especially when you see the brokenness in their family and you're relating with them and you can just feel how much good the Lord can do through you, to be told to shut it off is very hard. So that was kind of the first where the rose-colored glasses of Catholic education began to crack a little for me. Then I moved on from that school, took another kind of long-term sub-job, which was interesting in its own way. I went from the poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich, and teaching those two side by side. Amazing to see the poverty of both in the faith, and how, as hard as I could, no matter how I tried, I was forcing something that wasn't welcome in the classroom. So I was just really struggling. I was, I think, 22, and I just thought, man, I don't want to do this. Catholic schools are not what they need to be. So then I took another job. This was my third school in probably 6 years or 5 years. It was great. It was just your normal average Catholic school, nothing wrong with it. Solid Catholic leadership, pretty good staff. And we got to go to Mass once a week. We got to go to adoration. So good things, like nothing inherently wrong. And then as I kind of got familiar there, and again invested in these students and really wanted to help them see that the faith should be something that affects their whole life, I couldn't do it. Houghton Mifflin would not let me in the social studies textbook, try as I might. So it all kind of came crashing down when an 8th grade student who I loved very dearly said, "Miss Anderson, why do I need to know this?" And without even thinking, to get into high school. And I was like, no, that's the exact reason why I am in Catholic education, is to give them something more than just the next step, the cog in the wheel. So after I said that out loud and had some time for reflection, which as a 23-year-old, who knows what that looked like? It probably wasn't super intense. But something inside of me was going on where I was saying, this is not right. It's not right. I'm being told I'm too Catholic. We're not producing, even on a secular level, we're not producing incredible, stellar academics. And on the mission of the church, we are failing. The data is there. This wasn't just unique to these couple of schools I was in. Across the country, Catholic schools are really good at sending graduates who don't practice their faith, or worse still, are adversarial to it and resent everything about their education because of it. So that was it. I entered into Lourdes with these deep wounds and this strong sense of, we have to do something better. This is not just like, oh, we could change our phonics program, or maybe we should teach math this way. This was like, we've got to do something to reclaim this. I'm speaking in vastly general terms. I'm not certainly judging even the schools I was at, because I always want to assume benefit of the doubt. I think the Lord allowed me to receive such terrible experiences in order to light the fire in me and to say something has to look different. We are not living our mission. So in 2011, when I was a young chicken at 27, somehow I got the job at Our Lady of Lourdes. I remember interviewing with Monsignor Quang, who is a lovely man if you ever get the chance to meet him. We were over eating Vietnamese food at his sister's restaurant. I didn't understand any of the conversation in the air. I actually didn't even know what I was eating. I just was sitting there trying to sound smart and look good and like say the right things. And Monsignor Quang offered me the job on the spot, and he did it because I said, we need to have a Catholic school that's really Catholic. And he said, you've got the job. He didn't ask me how I would do that. He didn't say, what are your plans? What's your vision? He said, yes. The guy next to him on his finance council was like, you want to ask her a little bit of follow-up? He's like, nope. All right, I'll take it. I'm in. So I took the job, and I said, in very much a prayer of desperation, Lord, I know what a Catholic school doesn't need to look like. Help me to understand what it should look like. I'll just end with one story there before I start really talking. Monsignor Quang, so he hired me in, I think, April. And then like the last week of school, he was like, okay, I want you to come meet the staff. And granted, this staff knows that the school is about to close and knows that he's hired someone substantially younger than most of them with no experience in administration. So I walk into this room full of my new people I'm leading. Monsignor Quang's like, okay, see you later, and left. And I was like, what? I was not prepared for that. I was like, is it hot in here? Okay, what are your questions? What do we need to talk about? So I spent some time listening to them and hearing the feedback of what we need to do to reclaim the school. And I listened a lot, and then I decided in order to be a Catholic school, we have to live up to our mission, the church's charter on Catholic identity. I have a real aversion to the words Catholic identity because in my time teaching, I had been handed a book, very pretty cardstock, probably cost a lot of money to make, of a rubric of how to check off if you're Catholic or not. And it was, is there a crucifix in every room? One purple check. is, do you say a prayer at the beginning of the day? One green check, and it was a very colorful, elementary, beautiful thing. But it does not make a Catholic school, as we all well know. So when I came to this position of trying to make what is really authentically a Catholic school, I didn't go to a rubric. I went to the church documents. I went to what Holy Mother Church teaches us what a Catholic school is. So I'll just read a quick little snippet from Divini Ilias Magistri from Pope Pius XI. And after reading this, I knew what our mission was. The proper and immediate end of Christian education is to cooperate with divine grace in forming the true and perfect Christian. That is, to form Christ himself in those regenerated by baptism, according to the emphatic expression of the apostle, "My little children, of whom I am in labor again until Christ be formed in you." For precisely this reason, Christian education takes in the whole aggregate of human life, physical, spiritual, intellectual, moral, individual, domestic, and social, not with a view of reducing it in any way, but in order to elevate, regulate, and perfect it in accordance with the example of and teaching of Christ. I'm going to come back to that one. One more little paragraph. Hence, the true Christian, product of Christian education, is the supernatural man who thinks, judges, and acts constantly and consistently in accordance with right reason, illumined by the supernatural light of the example and teaching of Christ. In other words, to use the current term, the true and finished man of character. So that's it. That's what a Catholic school should be. If every school could read that and understand that, our hope would be that we all elevate to this. The problem is, first of all, I didn't read this until way too long in my teaching career. I didn't understand the mission of Catholic education. If I were to have looked at any of the mission statements of the schools I taught at, it would have been, at this school we strive to produce good citizens who love Jesus. And that's like pretty bland and boring, and you can do a lot with that and you cannot do a lot with that. So the mission of Catholic education is far deeper and greater than what I had been taught and what I had experienced. I am not saying any of this to judge, like I said, Catholic schools, because I believe that everyone has the right intention. We have to assume that. What we have departed from in Catholic education is the confidence in what the church says can be done well with academic excellence above, far and away beyond our secular counterparts. So we've lost our confidence. We've lost our desire to say, no, we're really Catholic and we teach good math. The two can happen. So my goal was, let's do this. Let's read the church teaching. This wasn't crazy Rosemary saying, we're going to turn this school around and I have all the answers. I actually had zero of the answers. I just went and read what the church said. So that's a pretty simple, practical first step for anyone out there who's wanting to do this. Go and read the church documents. When you present them, when you embody them and understand them, it changes who you are. Okay, a couple other practical things about instilling Catholic identity that we did at Lourdes and continue to do. I love what Dr. Lehman said. The liberal arts education, you don't arrive. You're not a finished project. It is the constant desire of pursuit of wisdom and of your own intellectual formation. I'm going to talk about that in a minute when I talk about teachers, but people look to Lourdes and say, well, they've got it all figured out. We actually don't. We are constantly renewing and revisiting and course correcting. This is a lifetime mission. It's not like, oh, this is the perfect school and it will remain perfect for the next 400 years and everyone who comes out of it is going to be perfect. It is a constant, humbling process to say we are in renewal all the time. Okay, so just some practical things that we did. We created a mission statement that means something. I'll just read it to you because I think it hits on a lot of things. Under the patronage of our Blessed Mother, the mission of Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic Classical School is to support parents in their role as the primary educators of their children. Our rigorous training draws out of students their natural desire for wisdom and virtue. By fostering a love for truth, beauty, and goodness, we seek to form disciples of Jesus Christ, set free to realize their potential by living joyfully in accordance with the truth revealed by God through nature and the Catholic Church. Kind of a mouthful, but that encapsulates who we are. Why I love having a strong mission statement, and when I work with principals across the country, Your mission statement tells you who you are. We have the mission from the church. The mission of Lourdes, particular to Our Lady of Lourdes, needs to be something that as a school leader I can fall back on and say, that's not in line with our mission. I'm not going to go sell magazines at a 10% return, not even 10, 0.3% return, because I'm not honoring the domestic church. I'm not honoring the primary educators by asking them to give of themselves in such little, not little, big ways with little return. Okay, so a mission statement is important. Second thing we did, and that took a couple years to create our mission statement. The second thing we did was we just began living liturgically throughout the school. It sounds very simple. We ordered our calendar in a way that we like to celebrate Christmas break proper, the 12 days of Christmas. So the teachers might not love it, but we try to go as close to Christmas Day as possible before we break. Same thing for Lent. It's really hard to sip on a margarita in Mexico in the middle of Lent, you know? Not that any of us make enough to do that, but the thought is there. Like, we want to have Easter be truly celebratory, and we can do that by giving a very long chunk of time. We celebrate the seasons. We celebrate our feast day. We celebrate All Saints' Day. We invite the parents into living liturgically so that instead of only rejecting the secularization of every single Christian holiday, we are replacing it with better. We're not saying everything about, you know, Christmas is, well, Christmas, but we want to give them more. The Catholic tradition gives people more joy, not less joy. And unfortunately, there are some, you know, rigorists who you don't always know it when you talk to them. The next thing we did was just increase daily Mass attendance. It was a decision that we made about 4 years into my time there, and it was like kind of a conversion of St. Paul moment for me, where here we are saying the Eucharist is the source and summit of the Christian life. It's happening every day on our campus. Why aren't we going there with the kids? It's 30 minutes. We certainly have enough instructional time to budge for that. And when you look at the liberal arts education, everything is integrated. So we're not sacrificing minutes to praise the Lord, to start the day in prayer with him. We are gaining eternity. That's the right way to look at that. There is no other way to look at that. We have confession and adoration, just part of the life of the school. I sometimes wonder if the kids go to confession a lot to get out of class, but it's okay. I don't judge them. That's what the priest does. No, that's what the Lord does. Okay. The next thing we do, and Dr. Lehman spoke a lot about the Logos, a lot about truth himself. When we take our Catholic identity seriously, and when you understand the philosophical difference of what modern education is and what the traditional Catholic sense of the well-formed man is, you are not forcing Christ in. He becomes part of every lesson. It was really awkward at the beginning to try to tell teachers, like, integrate the faith in. So, like, they're saying, okay, so how does Jesus do math? Like, no, that's not what I mean by integrating. Like, it's not forced. It becomes very natural, and the more you learn about the great tradition of the liberal arts education, the more you stretch your own mind. The integration just happens. And it's the way Christ and God intended the human mind to learn. We do not compartmentalize things. We try to, but we can't. We're humans. We are body, mind, soul, and spirit, and anything else I'm forgetting. We can't fraction things off. And if you think about where modern education has taken us, that's exactly what we do. We only talk about math in math class. We certainly only talk about religion in religion class. And if we try to bring the two together, it's forced. There's a reason for that. The Enlightenment thinkers divorced faith from reason. They said, if it can't be proven right in front of you, it has no place to be learned. I hope I'm not messing this up, but isn't that kind of what Descartes said? I think, therefore I am. So we have lived in a system that has divorced the two. When we go back to Catholic liberal education, we remarry them, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, I gotta stay focused. Elevate the arts. Again, something that unfortunately is the modern trend in Catholic schools and even in secular schools. When money gets tight, art and music are the first to go, and in reality, this is what our children need the most of, the experience and exposure to beauty, and not just giving them a blank piece of paper and saying whatever you draw is going to be beautiful. We want them to experience the history of the great composers. We want them to listen to beautiful symphonies because it shows them order within the musical world. To cut that out of the budget is to deny a very central part of our human formation. So instead of cut that out, I have put as much money as I can to elevate that. The same with the visual arts. We're not just throwing paint on a paper. We are studying the greats. We are learning and imitating who these great artists were. How did they create beauty? And what do you look at that. Let's assess it. Let's talk about it. That's something kids need more of, not less of. And the moment that goes out the window, we have boiled down modern education to simply the production line. It's not about appreciating beauty. It's actually not even about anything outside of you passing the test, getting the job, making money. Hopefully you'll be happy. Can't guarantee it, but that's what we're doing. So we did an about face on that. We want the students to experience beauty. And again, the integration is so easy, not just in the art classroom. You can put on classical music while they're taking a spelling test. You can have beautiful artwork in your classroom at all times. Take down all of the charts and things that distract them and put up a beautiful picture. It's amazing how that changes behavior. It's truly amazing. That's another talk for another day. Okay, so that was sort of how we reestablished our Catholic identity. It's not a finished product. Like I said, we are always in the process of this, and we are always committed to doing it more. Every community is going to respond differently, but the one thing I know for sure is we have the mission of Catholic schools from the church. This is not a niche program. This is not something that, well, that's okay for you. You don't have the same demographic as me. Like Andrew said in the question and answer, we have an entire population that is hungry for truth and beauty. We can do it. We can absolutely do it. Okay, the next thing I focused on is the faculty, which is a critical part, as our speakers before have said. I want to read a little quote from Archbishop Miller. He wrote The Holy See's Teaching on Catholic Education. So in a lecture he was giving about his little brown book, he said this: in a word, those involved in Catholic schools, with very few exceptions, should be practicing Catholics committed to the Church and living her sacramental life. Despite the difficulties involved, which you all know too well, it is, I believe, a serious mistake to be anything other than rigorous about the personnel hired. The Catholic school system in Ontario, Canada, where I was raised, when pressured by public authorities for what they regarded as reasonable accommodations, relaxed this requirement for a time. The result was disastrous. With the influx of non-Catholic schools, many schools ended up seriously compromising their Catholic identity. Children absorb, even if they were not taught, a soft indifference which sustained neither the practice of their faith nor their ability to imbue society with authentically Christian values. Principals, pastors, trustees, and parents share, therefore, in a serious duty of hiring teachers who meet the standards of doctrine and integrity of life essential to advancing and maintaining a school's Catholic identity. It's a long quote, really, really important. It's a disastrous result because the students pick up on the indifference. It just is. You can say, how do we find someone who can teach math well who's also a practicing Catholic? Well, first of all, start praying for that person. And second of all, be patient. The 11th hour is when I have made some of my best hires. The 11th hour, 59 minutes, 59 seconds is when I have made some of my best hires. Do not compromise on this because the students see it. You are communicating to them that the Catholic identity is important, but we're going to be okay with that with other. And this is not, I'm not trying to sound like we don't like non-Catholics. That's not it. We know what our mission is. Our mission is to form the Christian in his entire way of life. If he can compartmentalize it, we're not doing it well. So again, that's not me. That's Archbishop Miller. Take it up with him. This was very important to me, though, because I have experienced as a teacher the decrease in caliber of people working at Catholic schools who are not on fire with their faith. The faith and reason go hand in hand. When someone is on fire with their faith, they are also so excited to learn more and to go deeper in their own intellectual formation. It's not a one or the other. The two go hand in hand. So this is something that I'm very committed to at Our Lady of Lourdes, and it has proven to be great. The teachers are the curriculum. I don't hand them a package and say, I want you to parrot everything in this and give me the grades in the grade book. I say, here's what we've got. How are you going to make this come to life for our students? It is such a different approach, and it honors their own intelligence and it elevates their own intelligence. Another thing it does is it creates truly an authentic faculty of friends, because when we can talk about more than just the problem child in third grade, or the fact that the coffee was made too strong this morning, when we can talk about deeper things as a faculty, there is real friendship to be had there, and we've moved into this deeper level of our own humanity that then we can give on to the students. Okay. Also, what other profession can you just stop learning? I mean, even it's just absurd to think that and I'm being incredibly critical right now, but I kind of like it. No, just kidding. I have some baggage. But what other profession can you just say okay, I'm picking on third grade. You teach third grade. I don't want you to be any smarter than a third grader. All I want you to do is know this curriculum, know how to give the worksheets, know how to give the tests. A car mechanic has to know more than just how to change oil. They have to know everything about the car, and they have to be able to problem solve and do all the things. No other profession just lets you coast and say, our professional development this year is going to be on a new program, and that's all we're going to talk about. We have to stretch our own minds if we are being entrusted with the gift of stretching our children's minds. If we aren't doing it, we're not going to be able to get them to do it. Okay, so that's a huge part of my budget, is to invest in truly intellectual, ongoing professional development. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the curriculum. Sometimes we just talk about great books. Sometimes we talk about, depending on who we get, we talk about a lot of things. It's not just simply specific to that. Okay. So some of the other things I've done at Lourdes in terms of elevating my faculty and supporting them. We offer prayer times before the school day and during the school day. It seems very simple. One of the best gifts we can give our students is to show them that we're praying. I love how many teachers are in the chapel before school starts. I love how many teachers ask on their plan time, I've just got to go pray about this. That the students pick up on that. Okay, I already talked about professional development days. We have retreats that go deep. We push them, not to the point of, pushing them off anywhere, but to the point of saying, where are you at in your spiritual life, and where does the Lord want you to go further? And that is not a subjective question. Read the saints, read scripture. This is not something that you just get to create in your own mind. We have the saints to show us the way, and of course, Our Lady. Okay, I've already talked about how important friendship is among the faculty. This helps in a lot of ways. It helps with retention of great teachers. When someone feels like they belong in a community and where their service to the Lord is being honored and met with like-minded individuals, they don't want to leave. And that's the best gift we can give our kids, is some stability in the classroom. So the more I can give them happy hours and lunch together and time away and more happy hours, the better. They just tend to really stick around. Just kidding. We're not a bunch of boozers. Okay. But I do think friendship is important, and a space to get to know each other well. As Andrew already talked about this, how important it is to spend time in one another's classrooms. This brings about the humility that we don't know everything. We could have been teaching for 20 years. We could be teaching for 3 years. We are always looking to improve our craft. The art of teaching is just that. It is an art. You don't ever reach the point where you say, I am the best artist in the world, I've got it all figured out. So the more we can watch one another and learn from one another, the better. I give them time to plan lessons together, to have team meetings so that the integration of the subjects happens certainly more naturally. We pray for one another, and we live virtuously together the sacrificial life. Something we don't do well is play volleyball. We just had our 8th grade versus students volleyball game, and that's something I got to work on for next year. So I say that kind of kidding, but it's hard to be a grown woman and to be beaten by 8th graders. Just saying. All right. We do have fun together, though, so that's good. Something that I have learned as I have pursued this is we sometimes can be judgmental. Well, all the time. We're always making judgments that, okay, so this is a really good Catholic school, but its academics are mediocre. This is a really strong academic school, but they don't get the faith there. Has anyone ever thought of those things in terms of schools? I have all the time, and the schools I work with across the country, there's this tension. What I am seeing in hiring teachers who are on fire with their faith is that they are not, the two go hand in hand. You don't just hire strong Catholics who are on fire with their faith and leave it at that. You support them and train them to their own intellectual growth so that the faith and reason, like John Paul II said, go hand in hand. This cannot just be a beautiful quote up on the wall. It comes to life in the faculty. The faculty are what bring together faith and reason and then are able to give it to the kids. It's not, it shouldn't be one or the other. A Catholic school should not be a trade-off of like, yeah, it's a Catholic school. It's not a great Catholic school, but it's a great academic school. It should be one. And I would like to argue that you can't have either. You could have a very strong Catholic school if you are intent upon what the church asks of Catholic education. You're going to have great intellectual formation as well. If you don't have a strong Catholic identity, you could have great test scores, but are you really forming the intellect well? The answer is no, and we see the data for that. So it's not a trade-off. They both live together, and they don't live apart in my mind. Okay, the last area that I focused on in renewing is the importance of the family life. So you heard in our mission statement, the very first line is, we support their parents in the role as primary educator. This is critically important, and unfortunately, I think from a historical perspective, when Catholic schools were at their peak in the 50s and 60s, you know, and the nuns were there and they had 40 kindergartners, and you wonder how they managed. There was an assumption that the home life was different. There was an assumption that the nuclear family was praying together every day, that they were investing in their children's formation in a very intense way, and that the Catholic school was simply there to support the different content. Okay, so times changed. I don't think that the Catholic schools were aware of that for many years, and we just said, drop off your kids, write your check, we'll do the rest. And we did not do that well. And unfortunately, we now have a generation of parents, the millennials, my generation, who have not been catechized well, who are the first generation who have had market saturation of smartphones. So we actually don't even think as well as our parents or prior. And we are insecure in our own parenting techniques. So it is time for Catholic schools to go back and unpack that and say, church documents say the parents are the primary educators. I'll pause there and read something from Gravissime Educationes. Since parents have given children their life, they are bound by the most serious obligation to educate their offspring, and therefore must be recognized as the primary and principal educators. This is critical. This role in education is so important that only with difficulty can it be supplied where it is lacking. Parents are the ones who must create a family atmosphere animated by love and respect for God and man. in which the well-rounded personal and societal education of children is fostered. Hence, the family is the first school of the social virtues that every society needs. It is particularly in the Christian family, enriched by the grace and office of the sacrament of matrimony, that children should be taught from their early years to have a knowledge of God according to the faith received in baptism. Here, too, they find their first experience of a wholesome human society and of the church. Finally, it is through the family that they are gradually led to a companionship with their fellow men and with the people of God. Let parents then recognize the inestimable importance of a truly Christian family and the life and the progress for God's own people. Okay, so only with great difficulty can this be supplied where it is lacking. Of course, the family dynamics of today are hard, and there are some demographics where we have a lot of broken homes. All of that is true. What the church is saying is, if parents don't take their role seriously, how can we replace a parent? We can, with difficulty it can happen, and I believe I experienced that, but that's not, it's like the Lord said, in the beginning it was not so. In the beginning, the family was the center, and parents don't know that. We have a generation of parents that do not understand that. Where do they go for parenting tips? Facebook groups, Instagram. There are other moms, which is sometimes fine, but sometimes they're not getting great advice. First of all, they're not going to their spouse, the sounding board, the one that makes you not crazy. That's how I think of my husband. He's the one that keeps me from going off the rails. But they don't understand that when they bring children into this world, it's not something that Facebook's going to help them with. It's not something that, an inordinate amount of commitments of being on the basketball team and the ballet team and the swim team is going to help fill the void of their duty as parents. So we, as Catholic school leaders and as Catholic school teachers and wherever we are in our commitment to Catholic education, must help parents wake up to this. They aren't doing it unintentionally. And in fact, what I have seen through Lourdes is parents are saying, yeah, I just didn't know that. Now that I understand that, it has changed how I order my day. It has changed how I spend the evenings. We have turned off the TVs. Yes, I see the importance of praying every night as a family. Unfortunately, we just have a generation that doesn't understand that fully. There, again, I'm speaking in absolutes, and there are plenty of people who do, so I'm not saying everyone is like this, but it is a nonstop battle. And if we think about it, we shouldn't be surprised. Where is the devil going to attack? John Paul II said it. He goes to the family. So if we can distract mom and dad, if we can get them to forget that these precious little souls or precious big souls in high school depend upon their formation, upon how the parents form them. If the devil can distract from that, he's winning. The best Catholic school in the world cannot take the place of what the devil is doing to distract. So we have to help parents in a very charitable but a very clear and concise way wake up to this. How do we do this? Well, first of all, you saw with us, we rewrote our mission statement. We started saying from the beginning, again, this isn't specific to Lourdes. The church says you are the primary educators. Take that role seriously. Every single family that I interview, do you understand this? Do you understand your role? Yes, you don't want to teach your kids all the things, that's fine, but do you understand that how your son and daughter turn out is largely because of your formation? So we say it in our mission statement. I think wherever I can talk about the domestic church in front of parents, I do, because they need to start hearing that. They are called to be a little mini church. The Holy Family, if they could just spend 10 minutes a day contemplating the Holy Family, nobody that okay, we'll leave it at that. Okay, so we offer book studies for parents to work through and understand this. Not necessarily book studies on church documents. We always try to bring that up, but we just read books about parenting. Parents are hungry to be formed in their own parenting, and they're not getting it from the social media outlets. We want to make sure, sometimes the critique at Lourdes is like, well, all your parents have it together. No, they don't. I'll take parents anywhere they're at on their journey. What I want from them is to understand that they're on a journey, and I want the door to be open so that the formation and the grace of the Holy Spirit can help form their families. That's an ongoing thing. That's an ongoing conversation I have. I speak a lot at Lourdes about how critical the partnership is. This is not a contractual agreement. When parents invest and put money towards going to a Catholic school, it is a covenant. They are entrusting you to act in their place while they are at school. That relationship has to be strong. I have to be able to disagree with my parents in a way that they don't, throw a tomato in my face and leave just because I said something they don't like. We have to be able to be in a relationship properly with our parents. That doesn't mean doing everything they want. That means having the courage to not do everything they want and say, this is our mission, this is what we're doing. That's not easy. Okay, communication is key. And then the other thing that we try to do, and this, again, my faculty does this so beautifully, is just little suggestions throughout the day. Here, parents, if you have a bookshelf at home, go to this website, go to catholicbooks.com, and here's Great Lives of the Saints. Or here, parents, rather than just sending in treats for your son's birthday, send in treats for his baptism day. Very basic things. I always speak to parents that, of course, I want you to volunteer. Of course, I want you to give your time to the school. The most important thing you can do to volunteer and give your time to the school is have a peaceful home life. Pray together as a family. You can pray for the school, and I'll give you double volunteer hours, because that's more important to me than you making 700 cupcakes for an event. So the more that we can honor the domestic church and put that back in perspective, that's the top. The school is subordinate to that in terms of forming the kids. That doesn't mean parents make all the decisions. That's a talk for another day. Okay. I had something else to say on that, but I forgot it. Oh, I remembered it. It's on my paper. I just had to turn the page. Something else that I have really worked hard at instructing and helping my parents understand is the onslaught of technology that begins younger and younger. And, my 4-year-old, which this is so funny because we do not have screens in our house at all. My 4-year-old said, I think I'm ready for a phone. I was like, what? Where did you learn that? But even my direct efforts, he still sees that we have our phones. So I work very tirelessly to help parents understand, you have got to put limits on technology for your kids. That's on you. If you don't have the courage to tell them, I don't care if every other kid in your class has technology. This is not good for who you are as a person. Do not rely on the school to do that. The parents have to do that. The same holds true with theology of the body, with the formation of who they are into young men and women for Christ. Like, of course, we can teach it, and we do in the upper grades, but man, does that conversation have to start at home. And what I have found is that parents are insecure about that. So we give them resources. Beyond the Birds and the Bees is a great book that we have our parents read. Okay, so those are kind of the 3 areas that I focused on and continue to focus on. There's a lot more, but as I have gone through kind of this renewal process, I've seen that it all starts with understanding the church teaching on Catholic education. If we can get that right, if we can seek first the kingdom of God, all the other things will be added unto us. That's really what we're trying to do. Not everyone loves it. I've certainly had people leave upset with me, and I'm sure that's partly on me, that I don't do a good job explaining. But whether we boomed in enrollment or whether we didn't, that really wasn't the point. The point was the Lord has given us what he wants Catholic education to look like, and if we do that faithfully, we get to open a second campus. He sends the right families, and he sends great teachers that support that. So it's an ongoing effort. We never reach the end of our renewal, but I am very encouraged that, even 12 years ago when I started at Lourdes, we were the movement has grown. The understanding and the awakening that Catholic schools have got to recover what has been given up. That has grown, and that gives me great excitement and great joy, because this isn't something that only Lourdes should be doing. This is what the church asks of all its Catholic schools. Okay, thank you. That's that.